I'm Rachel, and my life was supposed to be a quiet, predictable story. 22 years of marriage, a cozy home outside Pittsburgh, and a husband I thought I knew inside out. But beneath the surface of our suburban routine, a darkness was festering, a betrayal so unthinkable it shattered everything I held dear. Picture this: the man I trusted with my heart, Mark, trading my dignity like a cheap poker chip to settle a debt with his closest friends. The moment I heard his vile plan, my world tilted, rage and heartbreak crashing over me like a tidal wave. I walked away, determined to rebuild from the ashes. But what happened next, in the dim light of a tiny apartment with those same friends, changed everything in ways I never saw coming. Stick around, because the truth of that night might just shock you. Picture this: the faint hum of a refrigerator in the dead of night, the only sound breaking the stillness of my kitchen. I'm Rachel, 47 years old, sitting here in a small suburban town just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the streets are quiet and the houses all look the same. My life, on the surface, is as predictable as the changing seasons. Married for 22 years to Mark, who's 50 and spends his days under the hood of cars as a mechanic. I'm just a part-time administrative assistant at a local dentist's office, someone who's always clung to routine like a lifeline. Stability is my anchor, or at least I thought it was. But beneath the calm, there's a current of tension in my marriage, a silent storm I can't quite name yet, brewing between Mark and me. We chose not to have kids early on, a decision that felt right for us back then. Our life together has been a patchwork of comfortable habits: Sunday dinners, shared coffee in the mornings, the same old arguments that never quite resolve. But there's also a weight of unspoken frustrations, things we've buried under years of familiarity. We're not alone in this little world of ours, though. Mark's got two close friends who've been part of our circle for over a decade. There's Derek, 48, a burly construction worker whose laugh could shake the walls, always filling the room with his larger-than-life presence. Then there's Ethan, 45, a quieter soul, an accountant with a sharp wit that cuts through conversations like a knife. The four of us have spent countless weekends together, barbecues in our backyard with the smell of charcoal lingering in the air. I can still remember the day I met Mark, like it was a scene from an old movie playing in my mind. It was at a mutual friend's wedding, both of us in our mid-20s, a little awkward in our rented formal wear. I was sipping cheap champagne near the dance floor, and there he was, leaning against a table, looking just as out of place as I felt. We got to talking about music, classic rock to be exact. Zeppelin, Hendrix, the Stones. We clicked over a shared obsession with vinyl records and guitar riffs that could tear your heart out. That night turned into late-night diner runs, then dates, then a life together. It wasn't always fireworks, but it was steady, safe. We built something I thought would last forever. Our home became a reflection of that stability, a modest two-bedroom place on the edge of town, with a patchy lawn I could never quite tame, and a garage stuffed to the brim with Mark's tools. The smell of oil and metal always clung to him when he'd come in after a long day, and I'd tease him about turning our driveway into a junkyard. But over the years, little fractures started to show. Tiny things at first: missed dinners, sharp words over nothing. I told myself it was just the wear and tear of time, nothing to worry about. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Mark's always had a gambling habit, something I thought he'd tamed long ago. A few bucks on a game here and there, a poker night with the guys. I figured it was harmless. But lately, he's been coming home later than usual, his face drawn tight with stress. I'm sitting at the dining table, the dim light casting long shadows across the room, when Mark finally opens up about what's been eating at him. His hands are fidgeting with a napkin, tearing it into tiny pieces, and his eyes won't meet mine. He starts slow, his voice low, admitting he's racked up a debt, a big one. $7,200 to be exact, from underground poker games he swore he'd quit years ago. My stomach drops as the number sinks in. I can barely breathe as he tells me who he owes it to: Derek and Ethan, his so-called best friends, who apparently fronted him the cash months back, expecting repayment with interest. I can feel the heat rising in my chest, my voice sharp as I demand to know how he could be so reckless, how he could gamble away our security like it's nothing. I'm pacing now, my hands trembling, waiting for some kind of excuse that might make this okay. But then he says it. The words hit me like a freight train. To settle the debt, he's agreed to hand me over to Derek and Ethan. For a weekend. I freeze, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I just heard. The room feels like it's spinning, the walls closing in as I stare at him, waiting for him to take it back, to say he's joking. But he doesn't. He stumbles over his words, trying to soften the blow, muttering that it's just a temporary arrangement, that they've always liked me in a way that makes my skin crawl. My heart is pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. Disgust washes over me, raw and bitter, mixed with a betrayal so deep it feels like I've been gutted. I trusted him, 22 years of my life, and this is what it comes to? A sick deal to trade me like I'm some kind of currency? I can't even look at him. The violation of it, the sheer audacity, makes me feel like I'm drowning in my own home. I don't say another word. I stand up, grab my purse from the counter, and walk out the door, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. I don't look back. I can't. My mind is a whirlwind of anger and hurt as I drive to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where the neon sign flickers, and the sheets smell faintly of cigarette smoke. For 2 days, I hole up there, barely sleeping, just staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying Mark's words over and over. How could he even think of something so vile? How could I have been so blind to who he really is? But on the 3rd day, I make a choice. I'm done hiding. I check out of that dingy room and use the savings I've kept tucked away, money Mark never knew about, to rent a small apartment downtown. It's nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom with peeling paint and a view of a brick wall, but stepping through that door with my own key feels like breaking free. It's terrifying, too, knowing I'm on my own for the first time in decades, but there's a fire in me now, a need to reclaim my life. Not long after, Mark calls. His voice crackles through the phone, thick with desperation, begging me to come back. He swears he didn't mean it, that he was out of his mind with fear over the debt, that he'd never let anything happen to me. I can hear the tremble in his words, the way he's grasping at straws. But it's too late. Every syllable feels like a lie, a cheap attempt to erase what he's done. My grip tightens on the phone, my jaw set, and I cut him off mid-sentence. I hang up without a goodbye, my heart pounding, but my resolve like steel. I'm not going back, not ever. A week later, I find myself at a diner a few blocks from my new place, the kind of spot where the tables are sticky with grease and the air smells of burnt coffee and overcooked bacon. I'm there to meet Derek and Ethan. I've been wrestling with whether to even face them, but I need to say my piece, to tell them exactly what I think of this twisted situation Mark dragged us all into. But as I sit across from Derek and Ethan in that diner, something unexpected happens. They're not smug or demanding. Instead, they look almost as shaken as I feel. Their apologies come fast, their voices heavy with regret, insisting they never wanted things to spiral like this. They claim they only lent Mark the money to help him, not to trap him, or me. I'm not sure I believe them, not fully, but there's a raw honesty in their eyes that chips away at my anger, leaving confusion in its place. When they ask to come by my new apartment later to talk more, away from prying ears, I hesitate. Every instinct tells me to say no, to cut them out of my life for good. But there's a part of me, maybe the part that's tired of running from everything, that nods and agrees. So here we are, the 3 of us, in my tiny apartment that night. The dim lighting from a single lamp casts soft shadows across the room, barely illuminating the cracked walls and sparse furniture. A half-empty bottle of whiskey sits on the coffee table, its amber glow catching the light as we pass it between us, each sip burning away a little more of the tension. We're crammed onto my second-hand couch, the fabric worn thin from years of use, and there's a nervous energy buzzing in the air like static before a storm. I can feel my pulse in my throat, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my shirt as we stumble through awkward small talk. Weather, work, anything to avoid the elephant in the room. But then the conversation shifts, like a dam breaking, and it gets heavier, more real. Derek, with his rough, calloused hands resting on his knees, looks at me with an intensity I've never seen before. His voice is low, almost a growl, as he admits he's always found me attractive, always noticed the way I carry myself, even in the quiet moments. My breath catches, and before I can process it, Ethan chimes in, his usually sharp tone softened, confessing he's felt a connection with me that goes beyond friendship. The next morning, I wake up to an empty apartment, the silence almost deafening after the intensity of the night before. The couch is still slightly indented where Derek and Ethan had sat, but they're gone now. On the coffee table, tucked under the empty whiskey bottle, I find a note scrawled in Derek's messy handwriting. It's short, simple, but heavy with meaning. They thank me for letting them in, for sharing a moment that none of us expected, and they promise to respect whatever path I choose next. My chest tightens as I read it, a mix of relief and uncertainty washing over me. I fold the paper and slip it into a drawer, not quite ready to decide what it means for us. A week later, I take the first real step toward closing a chapter of my life. I sit down with a lawyer in a cramped office that smells of old coffee and paperwork, signing the initial documents to file for divorce from Mark. It's not a decision I made lightly, but after everything, there's no going back. When I serve him the papers at our old house, I brace myself for the storm. He opens the door, his face already shadowed with exhaustion, and when he sees what I'm holding, his jaw clenches tight. Anger flashes in his eyes first, a sharp, cutting glare that makes my stomach twist. But then it fades into something else. Resignation, maybe even defeat. He doesn't fight me, doesn't beg this time. He just signs where he needs to, mutters something about being sorry, and shuts the door. I stand there on the porch for a moment, the weight of 22 years lifting off my shoulders, but it's not as freeing as I thought it'd be. It's just heavy. Months pass, and life starts to take on a new rhythm. I keep in touch with Derek and Ethan, seeing them now and then, not as anything defined or committed, but as something unspoken, a bond we're all still figuring out. We meet up for coffee sometimes, or late-night drives where the city lights blur past us, and we talk about everything and nothing. There's a closeness there, a quiet understanding. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.